Hey folks, welcome to patch 9.2. Overall, Holy is in a great spot coming into this new patch. So well that it's one of the few classes that actually seen any changes, and in particular, a number of these changes were actually nerfs. So Avenging Wrath had rank 2 removed, so realistically, Wings now just grants us 20% increased critical strike. As it sits in 9.15, it was up to 30% chance, so that'll stand out. Judgment, Hammer of Wrath, each of their damage was reduced by 12%. Holy Shock's damage was reduced by 12%. Our passive healing and damage is actually reduced by 60%. And Ashen Hollow deals 12% less damage. The healing remains the same. So overall, that's very sizable. And there's a very good reason for that change. It's tied to our tier set bonuses, and we'll speak about that in a few minutes. Before we do, we're just going to touch on the different talent builds as they exist. What you're seeing on the screen right now is tied to our Mythic Plus build. Overall, Holy's in a fantastic spot and continues to be in a great spot. Ultimately, like those nerfs that we just discussed, they were all tied exclusively to the fact that our tier sets are going to buff this class so much. So it's the Blizz trying to balance where Holy is headed. Let's jump into the build, and then we'll touch on those tier areas. Tier 1, you're sticking with Light's Hammer, no real change there. Tier 2, Judgment of Light, it's just a real nice passive approach. Tier 3, you're going with Blinding Light, but it can really go down to any of these abilities, just kind of depends on what the benefit and composition of your dungeon group looks like. Tier 4, Cavalier is the typical go-to for myself. I like the added mobility as a healer. Alternatively, Rule of Law is helpful. I think about Mist of Tyrna Scythe. On tyrannical weeks, you may actually end up with a group that's quite spread out, so being able to take advantage of Rule of Law is quite helpful. Tier 5, you want to go with Divine Purpose. It's kind of the go-to. Tier 6, Awakening. And Tier 7, Beacon of Faith is a very easy way to take care of yourself, or if you've got a particular member of your team in the dungeon that's going to take extra damage, like a melee, it's a real easy way to take care of them. Now, alternatively, you might want to go with more of a raid build, and if you do, that's not going to change dramatically. You can go with either Light's Hammer or Bestow Faith. Light's Hammer, the reason that gets recommended, it's just a little bit more versatile. But if you're in a raid encounter that's really mobile and requires a lot of mobility, Bestow Faith can really just edge out the actual Light's Hammer ability. It's kind of the passive healing over time aspect of where the build goes. What we do see, continuing with the raid build, Judgment of Light, no real massive change there. Tier 3, Fist of Justice is kind of the go-to. There won't be anything in raid content that Repentance or Blinding Light really impacts. Tier 4, Tier 4 is a bit of a fun one, right? So Unbreakable Spirit's not bad if you think you need Lay on Hands a little more often, as well as Divine Shield. Cavalier, there are some instances where you need to be spread out, although typically Holy is in melee range with the other melee attackers. Or Rule of Law, and Rule of Law actually gets the recommendation here from a raid perspective, just because of the benefit of the additional range that comes with it. Ultimately, a lot of different raids are reliant on groups spreading out, and Holy is reliant on doing damage to the boss. So keep Rule of Law as the go-to for Tier 4. Tier 5, you're going to stick with Divine Purpose. Tier 6, Awakening. And then Tier 7, this is where this gets to be a little bit of fun, and it depends on what the rest of your group looks like. You can go with the Glimmer build here, where Holy Shock leaves a Glimmer of Light on the target for 30 seconds. And then basically when you actually go do that Holy Shock, or your next Holy Shock, all targets with Glimmer of Light are damaged for 200 or healed for 500. So really allows us with our spot healing to do some really fantastic throughput. And saying you can have Glimmer up on up to 8 targets, that really lets you drop some decent damage or heals across the group. I personally really like Glimmer. It feels a little bit underwhelming if you're using it in Mythic Plus, but if you're using it in rating, it it will absolutely drive up your throughput significantly. But ultimately, where you land with your talents here will be informed by the legendaries that you choose to go with, and we're going to touch on that just next. So from a legendary perspective, one of the major benefits that we're seeing in 9.2 is the ability to use double legendaries just like back in Legion. And you'll see it rather quickly. Basically being able to use your Covenant specific legendary combined with another legendary of your choice. It really makes Radiant Embers attractive if you stack it up with the Mad Paragon. I think that's attractive almost any point in time. You're able to actually just drive up a massive amount of throughput, and I really like the Mad Paragon legendary overall. That drives up your Hammer of Wrath damage by 30%. So really easy way to take advantage of it. There's going to be a couple real fun throughput activities here that we're going to touch on. But before we spend a lot of time on that, let's talk very briefly on the go-to tier pieces. So the new raid, Eternity's End, are going to be once again providing different specs with tier bonuses. If you wear 2 pieces of gear, you get the Holy Paladin benefit, which is actually that whenever you cast Word of Glory, it causes your next Light of Dawn to heal for 50% more, and it can cast twice, kind of one after the other. So it's really going to allow us to top up and be able to help out our groups a bit. The 4-piece, this is like what caused us to get as many nerfs as we did. So each target hit by Light of Dawn has a 100% chance to reduce the remaining cooldown of Avenging Wrath by 2 seconds. So start to pull this back, and it's like bring back Ashen Hollow. I know Wings, we said it was alright, reduced from 30% to 20% crit, but overall what you're going to see is with this new tier set, we're going to be able to cast Light of Dawn more frequently and see insanely high levels of uptime on Avenging Wrath. Like, we're talking like 85 to 90% if you're setting yourself up the right way. So now this starts to open up a couple interesting questions, because initially Holy was like exclusively set up to go to Venthyr to take advantage of Ashen Hollow. But if you're looking from an overall throughput perspective, you probably want to go with Necrolord. The duty bound gavel, basically it becomes Vanquisher's Hammer. It gains an additional 1 charge and causes the cast of Word of Glory to automatically trigger Light of Dawn. So we're kind of seeing a bit of a stacking of Light of Dawn, which will cause a stacking for Avenging Wrath. So if you're at like 85 to 90% uptime on your wings, I can't even imagine that this doesn't get nerfed at the beginning of Shadowlands 9.2, because overall, like, Holy is going to actually be more impactful. So the recommendation from a Covenant perspective, yeah, load up on Necrolord. Even if you're Venthyr, it's probably time to make your way over to Necrolord. If you don't want to do Necrolord because you're just not down with Paladins looking like Death Knights, sorry Anduin, you actually want to stick with Venthyr then and take advantage of it. But really, Venthyrs won't benefit from this set the way that Necrolords will. So take advantage of it. I think you're going to see there's almost no way that Blizz can continue with it this way, because overall we're going to do a tremendous amount of healing damage here. So that's kind of it overall for the build, folks. Like, the class continues to be in a great spot overall, so much that we had to nuke ourselves a little bit, but yeah, we're having a ton of fun. And drop it down in the comments. Let me know the things that I could do different, that I could add, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Later.